My beloved brothers and sisters, it enters the room with a grace that disarms your suspicion. It knows how to shake your hand with warmth, how to maintain eye contact just long enough to win your trust. Evil does not always come dressed in shadows. It often arrives cloaked in charisma. It tells you what you want to hear, studies your insecurities, and speaks to them as if it understands your soul. It flatters, not to honor, but to distract. It praises, not because it sees your worth, but because it wants to blind you to its motives. You will hear it in the laughter that feels rehearsed, in the sympathy that feels too smooth. It shows up with kind gestures, but no kind intent. It mirrors your emotions, not because it shares them, but because it's been trained to imitate them. This kind of evil is not careless. It is calculated. It studies you like a blueprint, then builds a strategy around your heart's softest spots. You might confuse it for kindness because it knows how to echo your language and imitate your light. It may show up when you're most vulnerable, speak in tones that soothe, and offer help that feels like hope. But beneath the polished surface lies a hunger for control, a craving for dominance, and a deep void where conscience should live. It charms not because it wants to connect, but because it needs access. Access to your thoughts, your fears, your patterns, and your silence. And once inside, it does not build, it rearranges, rewrites, and ultimately rewires who you thought you were. Power reveals character more than pressure ever could. When a person believes no one is watching, when there is nothing to gain and no reward to earn, that's when truth walks freely. You don't need to hear eloquent words or see generous deeds broadcast to know a person's soul. Watch instead how they treat those who cannot repay them. Watch how they speak to the janitor, the waiter, the orphan, the beggar, the elderly woman crossing the street. Listen to their tone when they're not trying to impress anyone. Do they greet the invisible with warmth or ignore them entirely? Do they speak with gentleness to those who serve, or do they command as if others exist only to bend? The weak, the forgotten, the ones society deems small, these are the measuring sticks of humanity. A good heart bends low, stoops down, and lifts others without expecting applause. But a cold heart overlooks the hurting, blames the broken for being shattered, and speaks with venom masked in authority. Evil people don't just show themselves in grand betrayals. They show themselves in small, consistent acts of disregard. They interrupt the soft voices, mock the accents, dismiss the pain of those they cannot use. They may never raise their hand in violence, but their indifference crushes spirits. When they walk past a child asking for help, they do so without a pause. When they hear the pain in another's voice, they harden, they deflect, they dismiss it with a smirk or a shrug. Some people will treat those with less power as objects, as tools, or worse, obstacles. They are pleasant to the powerful but cruel to the vulnerable. They charm the influential but ignore the invisible. You'll see it in how they laugh at someone's accent, in how they roll their eyes when an elderly person takes too long to speak, in how they joke about others' misfortunes behind closed doors. Their heart reveals itself in moments where kindness costs them something, because kindness, when real, doesn't look up to seek recognition. It looks down to see who's been stepped on. The measure of a soul is not in how they act in comfort, but in how they respond to those who are in need, those who are trembling, those who are voiceless, those who cannot offer them anything in return. Your soul is wiser than your excuses. It whispers what your mind tries to rationalize away. When you feel empty after every conversation, when your spirit feels heavier after every encounter, pay attention. Energy does not lie. There are people who do not take your energy by accident. They drain it because they feed on control, not connection. They don't listen to understand. They listen to dominate. They don't ask how you are out of care, but to calculate how much more they can take before you notice. They leave you second-guessing yourself, questioning your worth, apologizing for things that shouldn't need an apology. And you call it fatigue, or maybe stress, but in truth you are being spiritually robbed. They take your light in pieces, not all at once. They will disguise their need to dominate as help, their criticism as concern, their jealousy as jokes, and slowly they make you shrink, not because you are weak, but because they need you small to feel big. Every time you leave their presence, you feel like you've left a part of yourself behind. Your laughter is quieter, your confidence more distant, your mind more clouded. That is not what love does. That is not what friendship looks like. The people meant for you should feel like sunlight, not shadows. They should charge your spirit, not challenge its existence. But the dangerous thing is that you keep trying to understand them instead of listening to yourself. You write off the heaviness as a bad day. You silence your instincts with maybe I'm overthinking. But beloved, your body, your energy, your breath, they're telling you a story. When your soul feels suffocated and you don't know why, when your spirit feels tired even after rest, something is wrong. We've been taught to endure toxic company in the name of loyalty, to confuse struggle with sincerity, but no true connection will leave you drained over and over again. You do not need proof on paper or a perfect explanation to validate what your spirit already knows. You were not created to be a dumping ground for someone else's wounds. You were not created to carry relationships that only walk in one direction. You were not created to bleed silently just to keep the peace. The feeling of depletion is the evidence. It is not imaginary. It is not dramatic. It is the clearest truth your body knows how to give you. It is not selfish to protect your energy. It is not cruel to retreat from what consistently breaks you. It is sacred wisdom. It is your soul begging you to listen. It is your spirit reminding you of what it feels like to be whole. Boundaries are the language of self-respect, and evil cannot stand to hear them spoken. Evil craves access, unrestricted, unquestioned, unearned. It thrives in places where the lines are blurred, where silence replaces resistance, where guilt is used like a key to pry open locked doors. The moment you begin to draw a line, to say, this is where I end and you cannot cross, evil does not retreat. It resents. It begins to twist your limits into selfishness. It calls your standards prideful. It mocks your no as if your needs are inconvenient. But boundaries are not walls. They are doors with locks, and you decide who holds the key. An evil person does not seek connection. They seek control. And control cannot survive where boundaries are firm. They may initially act agreeable, nodding at your limits like they understand, but that nod is just a strategy. Watch closely, and you'll see how they begin to test the borders. First with jokes that cut a little too close, then with questions that invade just a little too far, then with actions that disregard your comfort, your pace, your space. And when you push back, they don't apologize. They guilt trip. They make you feel like protecting your peace is somehow an offense. They interpret your boundaries as betrayal because they believe access to you is their right. Evil does not want partnership. It wants possession. And boundaries make possession impossible. To someone with evil intent, boundaries feel like rejection. They see them not as a healthy expression of self, but as an act of defiance. Because they were never interested in who you are, only in what they could take, reshape, and use. When you say no, you strip them of power. When you express a limit, you create a mirror that reflects their true intent. That's why they react with anger, silence, manipulation, or even counterfeit vulnerability. Anything to make you question your firmness. You'll hear phrases like, "You're too sensitive," "You're overreacting," "I was just joking." But these are not misunderstandings. They are strategies, meant to confuse you, to soften your stance, to reopen the gates you've locked for your own survival. Evil cannot thrive in clarity. It needs confusion. It needs you to doubt yourself. It needs you to prioritize harmony over healing, others over self, comfort over truth. But your boundaries are not a problem. They are a promise to yourself. They are the evidence that you have learned, grown, and remembered your worth. And when you enforce them, evil will always reveal itself, not because you changed, but because you refuse to let it continue unchecked. Evil doesn't always lie with loud, obvious words. Sometimes it bends the truth slowly, subtly, until reality becomes a reflection of its own desires. It doesn't erase facts. It rearranges them. It selects fragments, removes context, and then presents the edited version with confidence. And when you challenge it, it looks at you with calm eyes and asks, "Why are you making a big deal out of nothing?" Because evil has mastered the art of rewriting not just stories, but memories. One of its greatest tools is manipulation disguised as logic. It reshapes events to always place itself in the role of the victim or the hero, never the aggressor. They will speak as if their version is the only version. If they wrong you, they'll say you provoked it. If they hurt you, they'll claim it was accidental. If you confront them, they'll call it an attack. In their world, they are the center of every storm, the one who tried their best, the one who had no choice. They forget what they said when it's convenient. They misquote others. They insert themselves into stories that don't belong to them. They leave out the parts where they were cruel, harsh, or cold. They highlight the pieces that make you look irrational, emotional, unstable. And over time, if you're not careful, you begin to question yourself. Did I imagine that moment? Did I really say it that way? Was I being unfair? That is the erosion of truth. Not because it was lost, but because it was stolen, rewritten in real time to make you doubt your memory, your perception, your voice. They are experts at gaslighting, turning facts into fog, turning your certainties into confusion. You walk away from arguments feeling like you lost a battle you didn't even know you were in. They speak with conviction, with practiced calm, while you're left carrying the emotional debris. They are not interested in what is real. They are interested in what benefits them. Even in their apologies, if they come, they will reframe their cruelty as a misunderstanding, a moment of weakness, a reaction to your behavior. The blame is never theirs alone. They will drag others into their version, recruiting supporters, spinning tales, and if you tell your side, they'll say you're being dramatic or holding on to the past. Evil always tries to own the narrative, because controlling the story is the first step to controlling the people in it. They fear truth because truth has the power to expose. It has the power to level the ground they've built their control upon. They fear accountability because it makes them visible not in the image they've crafted, but in the reflection of their actual impact. And so they twist, they edit, they polish the lie until it becomes palatable to the outside world. What they seek is not reconciliation, it is reputation. What they value is not honesty, it is dominance. Their loyalty is not to truth, but to their version of it. And the more people believe them, the more they believe it themselves. Because in the end, evil isn't just about telling lies, it's about believing the lies it tells. There are people who will sit beside you in your suffering and still remain untouched by it. They will hear the tremble in your voice, see the weight in your shoulders, and yet feel no impulse to lift any of it. Not because they don't understand, but because they choose not to care. A heartless person is not without awareness, they are without empathy. They do not lack the ability to see your pain, they lack the desire to respond to it. You could be falling apart in front of them, and they will ask you to speak softer, cry quieter, move on quicker. Their detachment is not ignorance, it is indifference wrapped in convenience. They will watch you bleed and ask why you stained their floor. They will see your exhaustion and demand more from you. And when you finally crumble under the weight, they will look at you with blame, not concern. To them, your pain is not something sacred. It is an inconvenience, a disruption, a threat to their comfort. They may say, "I'm here for you," but their actions echo louder. They are only here when your struggle doesn't inconvenience them, when your sorrow doesn't require their energy. They will nod as you pour out your heart, but their silence is not safety, it is absence. A heartless person may even pretend to care, but their care comes with conditions, with deadlines, with the expectation that your healing should be quick and quiet. They do not carry your pain because they do not know how to carry anything that doesn't benefit them. They will expect your support during their storms, but will disappear when you face your own. They know how to receive, but they've never learned how to give, unless it earns them praise or power. You'll notice how they always find a way to turn your struggles back toward themselves. You'll share a wound and they'll respond with a story of how they had it worse, or how your burden is inconvenient to them now. They deflect, minimize, compare, or completely disregard what you're going through, not because they're distracted, but because they've decided your pain doesn't matter enough to carry. And if you expect comfort, they'll accuse you of being needy. If you ask for understanding, they'll say you're too emotional. They will twist your vulnerability into weakness and use it against you. A heartless person will stand next to you at your lowest and never reach out a hand, not because they can't, but because they won't. Their compassion is selective. Their empathy has an expiration date,